What's happening, team? Liam from Lazarus Personal Training. In this video, I'm going to talk all about something that affects all of us, and that is stress. I think we can all agree that through 2020, stress has become prevalent for a lot of us. Whether that be because we're sat in lockdown, we've been furloughed, or we may have lost his job due to the economy pretty much shutting down. Whether that be due to the Black Lives Matter movement that has affected so many of us, or whether that be because you're in professional wrestling and the Speaking Out movement has affected you in several different ways, stress has been extremely present through 2020. Now, stress has always been there, and it is probably the number one factor why people are unhappy in life. What I want to do in this video is talk a little bit about what stress is, talk a little bit about how that affects us, and then a little bit on the end to round out with. To begin with, let's talk about what stress is. We're all aware of how stress presents itself, but actually, do we know what stress actually is? If we look at the human body, stress presents itself as cortisol, or the hormone cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Basically, that triggers our fight or flight stimulus. So back in the day, we're out, we're hunter-gatherers, we're chasing down a big animal that we're going to eat and take back to a tribe, and then there is a big animal that wants to eat us. In that instance, we trigger this cortisol stress hormone, which then makes us choose the decision of, are we going to fight this animal or are we going to run away? Once we've made that decision and that event is over, realistically the cortisol levels should drop. But then we have cortisol right through the day. When we wake up, our cortisol levels are spiked because we need to get the body going and we need to begin our day. And then as we go towards the back end of the day, our cortisol levels should drop because we're about to go to sleep, to go into a recovery phase, to start that cycle all over again. So it's not to say that cortisol is bad. It's just to say that this is the thing that it does and this is the reason why we have it. However, modern day, 2020, we don't, luckily, have any large animals that want to eat us. What we're affected by stress-wise now are manufactured things. It's social media that spikes that cortisol level. It's our work environment that is a constant presence on us that can spike our cortisol level. It can be our home life and how that affects us, whether it be partners or kids. And let's be honest, kids can be stressful. All these things come into elevated cortisol levels that can be really hard to drop, because unlike a large animal that will appear and then you deal with it and then it goes away, work can be constantly present. Twitter can be constantly present because you can constantly get notifications and it's dead easy to open up your phone and have a scroll through. With that, cortisol is just in our body consistently. But then how does that affect the body? So let's have a look at that. On one side of the scale, we're looking at increased weight gain. We are in a stressed out situation and that has caused us to gain weight. Why is that? So when we look at having elevated cortisol levels, elevated stress, and we're trying to bring that down, one thing that people usually go towards is food. As much as food is a fuel, it is also, or it can be, a coping mechanism, and it can be a trigger for dopamine and a release of like good hormones, in a sense of we have the food and it makes us feel better in that moment. Now, on that front, I can pretty much guarantee that nobody is going towards broccoli as a dopamine release. Nobody's going, good Lord, I really fancy some kale right now. Pretty much 9 times out of 10, we're going to go towards higher calorie foods. So if we're in a stress position and then we are looking towards food to reduce that stress, we're probably going to go towards more high calorie density foods. Thus, we are consuming more calories and then we are gaining weight on top of that. With that, cortisol also affects our sleep. Like I mentioned earlier on, we have an elevated cortisol in the morning, and then as we go through the day, that starts to drop down as we go towards our sleep. Now, if we are in a stressed position, that elevated level won't drop. And also, what tends to happen is as we come towards the end of the day and things start to wind down, the mind gets really active. So then it thinks about all the things that we have to be stressed about. Or we sit there in bed with our phone, scrolling through Twitter or scrolling through Instagram or scrolling through Facebook, and then we elevate our cortisol levels again because we are directly affected by this thing that is stressing us out. Thus, we don't get as much sleep. When we don't get as much sleep, the body struggles to recover, but also, if we're awake longer, we consume more calories by default. If you are awake for a certain amount of hours, let's say if you're awake for 15 hours, and then you are awake for 20 hours, more often than not, you're probably going to consume more calories in that 20 hours than you are in that 15 hours. When we're asleep, we can't consume food. Also, with less sleep, it leaves us feeling sluggish and it leaves us feeling low on energy. And if we aren't getting energy through our sleep, we're going to get it through food. So again, we're consuming more calories down that end. And then to round that out, there's been a study that suggests that when we have spiked cortisol levels, we tend to carry more weight around our midsection, which for most people is the area that they want to lose body fat from. So those two things, in terms of we want to lose weight and cortisol levels being spiked, ends up with a midsection that we would rather not have. To look at the opposite end, but similar, and definitely something that I think people go through and more often than not isn't recognised, is what happens if cortisol and stress makes us lose weight. And this is just as important as it making us gain weight. And I think sometimes the conception is like, you're losing weight, surely that's a good thing. But it might not be. It might drop us into a less than healthy position. It might be something that we just don't want to do. And I think sometimes people can struggle with saying, yeah, I'm losing weight, because that's seen as a good thing. So let's look at weight loss. So when we look at a spike of cortisol, that also comes in with adrenaline as well. So if we look at that fight or flight situation, adrenaline is going to be spiked up. Think about if you've ever been in an argument on social media. I can guarantee you're pumped and you're ready to go for a virtual fight with a virtual person. That's adrenaline being boosted. What these two things do is they suppress our appetite. Now, if they're suppressing our appetite on a constant basis, that means that we're going to consume less food, which might mean that we are in a calorie deficit. Now, an intentional calorie deficit, if we're looking to lose weight in a good, healthy manner, is absolutely fine. But a calorie deficit that we are not in control of will put us into potentially a poor position. Another thing that tends to be present when we're in a stress position for some people is nervous movement. It can be fidgeting or moving or biting or just anxiously walking around. That is an increase in movement, which is then an increase in our energy output rather than our energy input. And again, that tips the balance into weight loss. So what you might find is that if you're in a stressed out position, you are eating less and then moving around more, which again increases that deficit that we sit in. Something that is becoming more prevalent in the scene and that is worth noting is how much of the brain and the gut are linked together. It's often said that the gut is the second brain, and I completely agree with that statement. If our cortisol levels are spiked and if we have a stressed out position, it's also going to affect our stomach and our gut. That may lead to gastrointestinal distress, basically our gut not playing along with what we want it to do. Might cause stomach pain, it might cause either a blockage of movement or a increase of movement, if you catch my drift. So on that might make us not want to eat, which again plays into this whole thing of losing weight unintentionally. I'm gonna have to plug in my laptop. This is good, probably should have done this beforehand. So when we're looking weight gain, weight loss, that affecting our body, what's the solution? Well, there isn't really one, and you will have read loads of stuff online about how we reduce stress, and I'm not going to bore you with it, and nor do I think that it is particularly applicable. Yes, we want to get better sleep. Yes, we probably want to eat better food. Yes, we want an exercise regime. But if you're in a stress position at this moment in time, if you feel like you have a lot of stress on you, the last thing that you need is someone coming up to you and going, do you know you should get 8 hours of sleep? Well, yes, I'm aware that I should get 8 hours of sleep, but unfortunately, I can't get 8 hours of sleep. Or, do you know you should exercise 3 to 4 times a week? Well, yes, I know I should exercise 3 to 4 times a week, but actually I just don't feel like exercising, so what am I going to do? They're solutions, but that doesn't stop where the stress is coming from, and this is what we need to recognise. Somehow, some way, we need to cut the stress down, which potentially goes past my scope of practice when it comes to personal training and online coaching. Whether that be cutting down your social media content, whether that be having that hard talk with work or having an even harder talk with partners, We need to look at where this stress is coming from and then reducing that way. And again, it's not really my scope of practice, but it's something that we need to recognize. Just putting a band-aid over it and going, well, can you increase your sleep, isn't going to solve where our stress is coming from. That is a benefit to having a reduced stress. What that stress is, we need to identify. What I think I can actually be helpful with is this section here about what that realization of knowing that we are stressed and how that affects us is. I can't sit here and help everybody's stress levels. That is something that if you are under stress at this moment, you need to look at and you need to recognize. However, with that, let's have a look at some realizations that we probably know already, but might just need someone else to say it to us. Being in a stressed out position is going to affect your physical results, whether we are gaining weight or losing weight. It will make your progress slower if you actually get any progress at all. The body is constantly looking for a homeostasis. So if we are in a stressed out position already, and then we add the stress of changing our body into that, the body may just go, no, not a chance. I'm not changing at all. I can't deal with more stress. So there we might end up not progressing despite us doing the right things. So alongside that, we also need to stop comparing ourselves to other people online, because that increases our stressed position. You can go online and see these transformations that happen and then go, man, how are they doing that in such little time and I'm not getting anywhere? Well, their life is different to your life. How long they've been doing it is different to how long you may have been doing it. Most importantly, their position of stress is in a completely different place to you. And that might be a case of, yes, it might be a working mum with 3 kids, but if she's got all her ducks in a line and her stress level is low, well, she's in a better position to lose weight despite having a more visible stress on her. And on that front, what we need to do is look at making smaller, realistic changes that help us go towards dropping these stress levels. What we probably don't need to do, and what a lot of people will do, is try and make a big, drastic change. And when we look to make a big, drastic change, we probably end up being in this position where we don't make a change, and thus adds on to the stress cycle. And the final thing that I want to leave you with, which I probably think is the most important bit that I'll say in this video: why do you want to lose weight or gain weight? Why do you want to change your physical body? Is it because you are unhappy with how your body looks at this moment in time? You truly need a change to your body? Or is that the manifestation of stress on yourself? Are you looking to change your body because you think that will change your other circumstances in life? Because most of the time it won't. Most of the time people change their body because of external factors, and that doesn't change the external factor. If you get a 6-pack but your work is still shit, well, unfortunately having a 6-pack isn't going to change that. We need to look at what those external factors are, reduce our stress and make our life happier. With that, it will be so much easier to push towards the body that we want, but also we might find that the body that we want isn't actually the body that we want. This stress, everything, is a really, really hard thing to deal with. I don't expect this to be a quick fix for anybody, nor do I expect anybody to go away and be like, right, that's me sorted, off and away I go, I'm just going to reduce all my stress. This is a long-term thing that we all have to deal with, and to say that we drop stress in one area doesn't mean that it won't ever come back again. But again, I hope this video helps us highlight some reasons as to what stress is, how that affects our weight gain, our weight loss, and then overall the most important one, the realization that having more stress on our body is going to affect how our body operates. If you need to talk about anything, if you just need to expel some thoughts and feelings that you've got, drop me a message, let me know. I'm happy to listen. If you like this video, give it a like. If you think that someone else probably needs to see this, give it a share. If you really like my content, subscribe to the channel, massively helps. I've been Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, and I will see you next time.